Borders are created based on natural or political reasons. Some were created a few years ago, others were created centuries ago. However, determining borders hasn't always gone well. Hello guys, and welcome to the 10 most interesting misplaced borders in the world. Today we're looking at the funniest, most interesting, and amazing misplaced borders that were accidentally put at the wrong place. Number 1. Border moved. A Belgian farmer recently relocated a stone monument that was part of the Belgian-French boundary, making France slightly smaller and Belgium significantly larger. The farmer, it appears, was unaware of the significance of the stone and simply wanted to make more place for his tractor. A local history buff uncovered the occurrence after noticing that the stone had relocated 2.29 meters, 7.5 feet from its original location. The farmer was ordered to return the stone to its proper location or face legal action. Number 2. Border down. When he hacked down some trees that marked the border between the two countries in 2012, a German pensioner unintentionally seized a stretch of Czech Republic property. The man claimed he was clearing his garden when he discovered the trees were part of a historic landmark dating back to 1770. The event created diplomatic tensions between Germany and the Czech Republic, and the individual was ordered to restore the trees or face a fine. Number 3. Never trust the internet. When a Nicaraguan official utilized Google Maps to estimate the boundary line in 2006, the border between Nicaragua and Costa Rica was changed by around 3 kilometers, 1.9 miles. This miscalculation resulted in a conflict over Isla Calero, a wetland area claimed by both countries. Nicaragua was accused by Costa Rica of invading its territory, and the country filed a lawsuit with the International Court of Justice. In 2015, the court found in Costa Rica's favor and ordered Nicaragua to compensate Costa Rica for environmental damages. Number 4. Small misjudgment. When the United States and Canada had to divide their territories, something went terribly wrong. Well, terribly is a big word, but you get what I mean. The border of the United States is determined by sticking to the 49th parallel. The 49th parallel is this line and the border between Canada and the United States. However, going more to the east side of this border, we find a weird protrusion in the north of the state of Minnesota. Now, you're probably wondering, why is this piece of land not just part of Canada, or why didn't they stick to the 49th parallel at this part? The relatively straight line curves northward at its eastern terminus to encompass the northwest angle in the United States, the only spot outside of Alaska where the states spill over the 49th parallel. The angle was formed as a result of the Treaty of Paris, 1783 false belief that the Mississippi flowed so far north that the northwesternmost point of Lake of the Woods could be connected to it by a westward line to the Mississippi. To make it simple, they mistakenly thought the Mississippi River stretched further north than it actually does, causing the wrong borderline. Still, it's kind of weird. How can you misjudge the length of a river? Well, at that time, the 18th century, people simply didn't have access to developed world maps like we do nowadays. They didn't have internet access, they didn't have high-resolution maps like we do, and the maps were certainly not precise as we know them today. And so the northwest angle was a mistake by a simple wrong map. As for the 120 Northwest Angle residents, they are separated by the mainland of the United States, and the only way to get here is to travel through Canada, or to cross the US-Canada border twice, or by boat by sailing across the Lake of the Woods. Number 5. The hotel border. Now, I don't really know if this border is misplaced, but the story of this border is worth being mentioned. La Cure is a little town on the Franco-Swiss border about 30 kilometers, 20 miles north of Geneva. Half of the village is French, and the other half is Swiss. The international boundary passes directly through a number of buildings in this town. The Hotel Arbez is one of these, and while the border may have been a selling point for some of its earlier visitors, the border goes through the double bed in the honeymoon suite, for example, it became a key geopolitical fault line during World War II. While Germany seized France, Switzerland remained neutral, independent, and uninhabited. However, during the war, it's believed that the French side of the hotel accommodated German soldiers and officers who dined on the hotel's exquisite meal, while members of the French resistance remained in rooms on the Swiss side of the hotel. If the Germans had apprehended the resistance members on the French side of the hotel, it would have resulted in an arrest or worse. However, as long as they remained on the Swiss side, they were untouchable, a very practical advantage of Switzerland's vaunted neutrality. If they were to touch any of the French resistance members, they were simply risking a war with the Swiss. Number 6. Another misjudgment. Tasmania, a little island off of Australia's southeastern coast, is an afterthought. It's Australia's only state that's also an island. Despite this, Tasmania has a land border with Victoria, the southernmost state on the Australian mainland. I hear you thinking, how? Tasmania is here while Victoria is all the way up here. It does so totally by accident. When Tasmania's sea border with Victoria was drawn at 39 degrees 12 south, it was assumed that the line only crossed open water. However, upon closer scrutiny, the line did cross a little island that a previous survey had slightly misplaced. The rock, originally called Northeast Islet, was renamed Boundary Islet, and its sole purpose now is to be a geopolitical footnote, the only land border of the island state of Tasmania, and the shortest of all land borders between Australian states, all of 85 meters, 93 yards. Really interesting how such a small piece of land can make such a difference. Tasmania, located 240 kilometers away from mainland Australia, does have a land border. Stunning, right? Now, in the next misplacements, there were far more serious disputes in order to determine borders. Number 7. After Yugoslavia. In the early 1990s, the Socialist Federal Republic of Yugoslavia was disintegrated. Slovenia and Croatia both sought independence from Yugoslavia, leading to a series of conflicts and eventually their declarations of independence in 1991. At the time of Yugoslavia's breakup, the borders between its constituent republics, including Slovenia and Croatia, were not clearly defined because Yugoslavia had a federal system, and internal borders were not meant to be international ones. This lack of clarity contributed to the dispute. During the process of declaring independence, both Slovenia and Croatia asserted territorial claims that were based on various historical and demographic factors. These claims often overlapped, creating a contentious situation. You should see it as lines on a map crossing each other. Both of the countries had a different border in mind, which led to a misplaced border and even a dispute after. Number 8. The returning story of the inaccurate map. The border between India and Pakistan, which included what is now Bangladesh, was determined by a British lawyer named Sir Cyril Radcliffe in 1947 during the partition of India. Radcliffe was tasked with drawing the boundary lines based on various demographic and administrative factors, but he had no prior knowledge of the region and its complexities. Dahala Kangrabari is part of the Cooch Behar district, which has a complicated history of governance by several princely rulers and colonial forces. It had numerous territorial portions, enclaves, exclaves, and counter-enclaves, making delineation difficult. Radcliffe and the Boundary Commission he chaired were unfamiliar with the local terrain, demography, and previous land ownership. This lack of local understanding resulted in demarcation errors. The border demarcation process depended on outdated surveying and mapping techniques that were less accurate than modern approaches. Errors in measurement and mapping could result in border placement problems. It simply means they created these borders purely based on inaccurate maps. In some cases, the demarcation process resulted in anomalies where land parcels ended up on the wrong side of the border due to errors or imprecise measurements, just like the northwest angle. Dahala Kangrabari is an example of such an anomaly. It became an Indian enclave within a Bangladeshi enclave in India. However, in 2015, India and Bangladesh signed an agreement to exchange these enclaves, finally resolving the border anomaly and simplifying the lives of the people living in the affected areas. Number 9. The dispute of Egypt and Sudan. Bertawil. This is a small area of land, approximately 2,060 square kilometers, located between Egypt and Sudan in northeastern Africa. The borders between the two countries were established in 1899 by the British and Egyptians, but due to a cartographical error, Bertawil was left unallocated. It's one of the few unclaimed territories in the world. An agreement between the United Kingdom and Egypt about the administration of the Sudan was signed on January 19, 1899, and defined Sudan as territories south of the 22nd parallel of latitude. It included a provision giving Egypt sovereignty of the Red Sea port of Sukin, but an addendum on 10th of July 1899 awarded Sudan possession instead. The United Kingdom drew a distinct administrative boundary on November 4, 1902 to represent the actual use of the land by the tribes in the region. When Sudan gained independence in 1956, Egypt considered the latitude 22 degrees territorial boundary of 1899 to be the border between the two countries, whereas Sudan claimed the administrative boundary of 1902. In conclusion, the United Kingdom made an incredible mess by changing the border line 2 times. Although the 22nd parallel was a great plan, just like the 49th parallel divides Canada and the United States, they decided to create a deviated border to give a piece above the 22nd parallel border to Sudan. Why? I don't really know, and it caused an unending dispute between Egypt and Sudan. Until today, it's still not solved. Although the upper part is unofficial under Egyptian rule as of today, the lower part is actually no one's land. Like, literally, it doesn't belong to any country, and Sudan still doesn't agree with the upper part being Egyptian. Number 10. Never place a border based on rivers. When the border of Mexico and the United States had to be determined, just like so many examples, they created the border based on a river. Or simply said, the river was the border, with a fat emphasis on was. Because for those who don't know this, rivers changed their course over the years, and so did the course of the Rio Grande River, which was supposed to be the Mexican-Texas border. However, as we can see on this map, the river changed over the years, and so we see parts of Texas on the Mexican side of the river. Another example, which looks kind of like the examples of the northwest angle, is this small part on the Dutch side of the Meuse River. For some reason, which I don't know exactly, this part used to belong to Belgium, meaning it was an exclave of Belgium completely surrounded by the Netherlands. People who lived on this 15-football field large peninsula were isolated from the Belgian mainland. However, this changed when Belgium agreed on moving their border on the western side of the Meuse, which of course makes much more sense. Borders wrongly placed by maps, changed too many times or based on natural features, or of course citizens that can apparently change the border of 2 countries. If I knew I had the ability to do that, I would have done it years ago. No guys, just kidding, of course. Anyway, these were 10 highly interesting misplaced borders of the world. So what do you guys think? Was it possible to avoid some of these mistakes? Or does it actually make sense in some cases? Let me know your opinion in the comments. And don't forget to leave a like and to subscribe if you like this sort of content. Anyway, thank you for watching, and see you in the next of Earth Basics.